And welcome to this roundtable on the future of UX. We're so happy you could join us. So let's start with an icebreaker. Go ahead and turn to the person next to you. I know you come to conferences to learn, but you come to conferences to network too. So turn to the person next to you and tell them something that made you happy today. Now that you've met each other, we're going to just go down the line and kind of introduce ourselves. So tell us your name, where you work, and what you do, and one thing that excites you about the UX industry.
My name is Amyx. I'm the CEO and founder of Amyx and McKinsey, and we specialize in wearables and the Internet of Things. I have to tell you, most conferences that I go to tend to be very scientific and engineering focused, and the nice thing about this conference is you're all good looking. So thank you for that.
Mike Gilpin, CTO of Siteworx, and one thing that excites me was that
about the UX industry.
About the UX industry. I love the way it brings everyone together. There are too many ways in which technology divides us, and I love the way user experience brings us together.
We're Lanier. I lead design and UX at Highrise, and I think the thing that excites me about user experience the most is how it's constantly evolving. It's not just about screens or interfaces that we're all having experiences every day in our lives, and as an industry we can continue to tackle all of those challenges.
What excites me most is probably the fact that we've gone so far. Like, we went from designing desktop experiences to laptop to mobile to wearables. Screens keep getting smaller, and now we're designing stuff for products with no interface at all. It's still experiences, but it's an exciting trend. I've been playing around with my Amazon Echo, so it's making me think of that. So recently, we've been seeing a convergence between UX and other parts of the business. What's that like in your company? And have you noticed an overlap in job roles, seen any title shifts? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I guess my industry is a little bit different in the sense that it's not traditional user experience. But what we're seeing is we're asking some tough questions, and I think the answers are still being formulated in the sense of, we cover things like natural language processing, computing on the edge, and sensors like Sarah said, that have no form factor displays. So it's a new world, and we're still kind of frankly defining it. And so it's very challenging. A couple of the conferences that I spoke at, one was on localization, and the other one was recently on location and context. And I challenged them to really think hard about their industry as well as their function, because the kinds of things that you're working on today, whether it's user experience or marketing and content, is going to vastly change in the next decade. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next session that I'll spearhead in room 6.
Well, Siteworx is in the middle of pivoting to a more lean and agile way of going to market and also delivering value to our clients. And so as we do that, we see the responsibilities of the members of teams become more like one another. So a designer may have a development background, a developer may have also a design orientation because they were an art major in college, or whatever the reason may be. And given that, you see teams cohering around common themes more readily. They don't see themselves as so rigidly playing out defined roles, but instead they're centered around the customer. They really understand what the customer is trying to accomplish, and are obsessed with achieving that goal by whatever means necessary. And they get excited about it. They develop a lot of emotional commitment to that, and the differences between them tend to subside.
I think that's very true on a product team as well. You see user experience beginning to become the responsibility of everyone in the organization, everyone on the team, to the extent that user experience as part of people's titles is even beginning to go away. We begin describing ourselves as product designers or customer experience designers. And because it's no longer just one person's responsibility or one department's responsibility, that it's a shared responsibility for everyone.
Well, Scott, you mentioned natural language. Let's talk about that for a minute. More and more we're talking to devices like we would talk to a friend. How is it changing the way we're designing things? And how do you design something where you're just talking to it when there's no interface?
Well, firstly, going back to the trend, which is I've been in conversation with Intel and TBS as America's Greatest Makers, which is going to be a new show that's starting out next year. And it's showcasing hardware makers. And one of the things that's happening is kind of the 70s time period, it was the rise in hardware. And then it's just been really around websites and software and apps until recently. And with the wearables and the Internet of Things, we're seeing a tremendous convergence between the hardware and the software. And matter of fact, it's a lot more sophisticated than that. It gets into optical engineering, electrical, mechanical. And one of the things that, for example, Samsung does, Mo at Samsung does with his team is he will bring on experts that are maybe coders or experts in firmware, but he will expose them to the qualitative and the creative UX side, and vice versa, so that there is a cross-pollination, so that whether you're working on a component, a hardware piece, or the firmware, or the app, or even the cloud side, you have a holistic perspective on things. Now, coming back to the question at hand around NLP, one of the things that's going to be very interesting is, and for some of you, perhaps maybe I'll start with a question. Who has an Amazon Echo or something comparable at home? Or maybe a connected device at home like a Nest? Great. Well, one of the things you know is that when you get these things, you're going to have your own dedicated apps. And imagine over time, you're going to have 50 or 100 plus devices that are connected in the house. You don't want to have to open up every individual app to control the blinds and turn on the coffee machine and open up the garage door. You want to be able to have an abstraction layer. So my friend who runs Words, Ian, in Europe, for instance, is creating that abstraction layer that gets connected to all these different devices. Moreover, let's think about some of the personas, and I love the fact that I was in a prior session on some of the best UX best practices. Some of these things, it's just more intuitive to interact on a voice activation versus trying to open up an app. Imagine giving something like this to your parents who are perhaps in their 60s or 70s or even 80s. Do you think they're going to be able to open up an application and go through a workflow to initiate a particular set of events? No. So natural language processing is a way to be able to interact with the systems without actually having to explicitly program. And that's a very interesting thing.
My 4-year-old learned how to use the Amazon Echo within like a day of having it. And she was telling it by the end of the day, she was saying, Alexa, stop playing Maroon 5, play Disney Pandora. Why am I in for it?
Sounds exciting. So I mean, for me as a technologist, I love to understand what it takes to actually deliver those experiences with voice and natural language processing. And I'm a bit of an experimenter, so I've been experimenting with voice technology for a long time. But for Alexa to understand you, she has to know that. She has to have context. And that context really comes from data. That data is exposed through API layers. So having the right combination of external, internal API data to reveal that insight about you that says, it's time for you to go to the airport, sending you a reminder, it's going to take you longer than planned to get to your appointment
Or
because the
Alexa's
traffic's
case,
really bad.
it has an API specifically for cat facts.
Wow.
We didn't know
So, I mean, I think this shows the connectedness of things, which again is about how user experience brings things together. And it's a challenge, frankly, for a lot of organizations who have developed over the decades stovepipe organization structures and skill capabilities within those organizational entities. And so trying to bring that together, you really have to break the china, and just make a lot of people mad at you and make it work.
I think for designers, it's got to be a big shift away from the way many designers think now, which is being very focused on the UI and very focused on whatever visual stuff is trendy this week. That is moving away from flat versus skeuomorphic, or using Proxima Nova everywhere, and really being focused on the user stories, the user goals, and the content. And also, beginning to break away from the patterns that we've instilled in ourselves from designing on the desktop to designing on mobile. This idea even that people do things sequentially. Like once people are using their voice, to even say, oh, stop Maroon 5 and play Disney Pandora instead, that's very sequential versus like switch to Disney Pandora and not even giving a command to stop the other thing. And so really understanding how users in a natural environment are going to be interacting with these objects, and to be able to pass that on to the programmers, but to do the research in order to get into how people are going to behave, which is very different than the way we typically think about user interfaces right now.
So what's the worst experience you've experienced lately? And how would you have fixed it?
Gosh, it feels like every time I open up some sort of an application, there's definitely some fragmented experience. I'm always going to give you a little bit different, slightly different angle from the rest of the panelists. Let me divert a little bit and talk about robotics and 3D avatars. So, coming back to this notion of how are we going to be interacting, whether it's the car, whether it's buildings or objects, it's going to be very interesting. Where imagine that there's a 3D avatar, and it actually exists, that we're working with a company called Limbic AI. It came out of research, but now they're starting to become a private entity. And the visualization of the 3D avatar is so realistic, it takes about 10 seconds before you realize that it's not human. Moreover, underlying this natural language processing is something called effective computing. So unlike some of the terms that you're probably familiar with, like sentiment analysis on the web, effective computing, what it does is it actually starts to get at the detection and the classification of primary and advanced emotions. So as these intelligent agents interact with you, they actually can also decipher how you're feeling, how you're reacting to that message. That's a very interesting notion. So for example, I travel all around the world, and if I go to some place I'm not familiar with, I can literally have a conversation with front of the wall, like a hotel or a convention hall, and there's literally an interface that's going to be talking to me, and that is my user experience. The other feature is Alibaba and Foxconn and others, SoftBank, have created this alliance, joint venture to pursue consumer robotics, robot pepper. So pretty soon you're going to be able to purchase that and bring that at home. So that actually adds another layer of UX in the sense, how do we start to have empathy and interaction with things that are not human, that have no sentient or consciousness. But it's going to be something that's going to be really a regular thing in your kitchen, including a robotic arm as an example.
So I actually cheated a little bit because in addition to my own hate, which is buy online, pick up in the store where you go and it's not ready, I hate that. Or where, for that matter, just in general, you can think of it as the experience of picking up in store after buying online is worse than if you'd just gone to the store and bought the damn thing, right? And that happens. So the first time that happened to me was at Home Depot, and I'm glad to report that Home Depot has invested and really improved significantly their pickup in store experience. So has Lowe's, by the way. There may be some Lowe's folks here because I know Lowe's is based in the area. The other thing I asked Carrie Spates, who's the head of our design organization, our design practice, to say what she hates the most. Carrie's getting ready for a trip to us in Antarctica. I almost said Australia. And so she's been going to REI a lot, and she really loves the way REI blends the experience in the store and online. She's also been having to use Kayak and do a lot of bookings of flights and other travel pieces that need to fit together into her your entire travel experience. But she says some of the travel sites, not Kayak by the way, for certain of those travel service providers are really terrible in the way they fail to remember you when you go back. It's, you know, Carrie's point was, sometimes it's just the simple stuff that people get wrong and you're like, how the heck, in this modern day and age, right, when people know better, do they still screw up the basic things? And yet they do.
When I lived in Ohio, my local grocery store was Giant Eagle, and almost all of the registers at Giant Eagle were self-checkout. Like you had to search for a human being. And in order to go through self-checkout, you had to scan your little VIP card or whatever. This is just a grocery store. It's not Sam's Club, it's not Costco. You don't have to be a member. But literally, they would not allow me to buy food unless I scanned this little barcode for them. And I think about that experience also when I use the mobile web. I'm really tired of mobile websites, you know, if I hit it on my iPad or on my iPhone, trying to force me to download the app. I went to some Yelp reviews recently. Yelp would show me the content of one review, and then when I tried to look at a second review, get a balanced portrait of what's going on at this restaurant, Yelp told me that I was not allowed to read a second review on their mobile website. I had to download the app. So coming to a conference of digital marketers, I'm here to say, please stop ruining the mobile web. I don't want to download your app. My poor iPhone is already over its storage limit already. And you know, I want to be able to use the mobile web and not have it filled with popovers and prompts to download things that I don't want. And quickly, just, you know,
You're not going to use it.
the web is open, the web is beautiful, you know, the web has allowed our society to transform in so many positive ways. Don't force people into walled gardens that they don't want to be in.
Well, and I think there's an interesting example I've seen of somebody getting that right, but they didn't always get it right. That's Netflix. So I use Netflix on the web, I use it on the phone, I use it on the iPad, and sometimes when you're in an email, you return the disk, you want to do a review, it just pops you into the browser, and that's all you want to do. But then sometimes you want to transition to the app. So it used to be very challenging if you were both a disk and a streaming user of Netflix to get what you wanted between those various pieces of the experience. They figured it out now. It's very smooth and seamless. It always goes to the place I want to go and lets me stay there and do what I want to do. Yay.
What drives me nuts is on DVR, like on demand, your cable on demand. It's like they haven't thought that there's like any sort of information architecture there. So you go in and it like will immediately make you search, or at least the one I have immediately makes you search by network. So you know a show, you're like, I have no idea what network it's on. It's on my DVR, it just shows up every week. I don't know what it's on. But then you have to like Google it, figure out what network it's on, go into the network, and then scroll through a list from A to Z of like all the networks. And then once you click a network, it's like 20 minutes just to watch a show. It's not worth it. But it really hasn't changed. Like the on-demand on cable, those cable boxes, that interface has not changed within 5 years.
Get a TiVo. It's way better.
There you go. Yes, so that drives me nuts. And then another natural language one that drives me nuts is the car navigation system. So I just bought a Ford. And anybody work for Ford here? Please say yes. So in order for me to use the voice navigation, I can't just say take me home. I have to say navigation, I have to click the button and then say navigation, destination, street address. And then it will say, would you like a street address or a point of interest? And I have to say street address. And then I have to say the address. So it's not natural language, like you were saying. It's very sequential, and it drives me absolutely nuts.
And it trains you not to use that, right?
And
Just use your phone.
it's a brand new one too.
Yeah.
So it's a brand new car. So
Yeah, it's
unfortunate. It's unfortunate they didn't get it right.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say that one of the things that I was talking to Robert Scoble last week at a conference is this notion of ambient virtual assistant, meaning that the intelligence of these computing devices are not specifically isolated to your phone or to your watch or even jewelry or clothing for that matter, but rather it's a collective that works as a system to understand these inefficiencies and fragmentation. So the example that you're talking about has to do with structured data. So unless it's structured, the system doesn't really know how to deal with unstructured, dark data. So it's asking you to, kind of a binary set, right? What the Amyx system that we're talking about, and I know that Robert was telling me, one of the inventors of Siri, for example, is working on this next invention that kind of goes towards this notion of ambient system. Is that, and I'm probably sure some of you probably have heard of Microsoft Cortana as an example. That's probably the most tangible way to explain it, where information from your phone, information from devices on your body, and environmental things, thermal, electromagnetic spectrum capabilities, these things are sensing you and understanding your context, including your app usage, your calendar, and so forth. And what it's doing is it's not trying to actually spam you, but rather it's actually trying to understand you and anticipate your needs so they can start to automate. So who's ever heard of X.AI? X.AI? X.AI does something very simple using an artificial intelligence agent, which is we all get into this issue where we have to go back and forth with scheduling meetings. All you have to do is type in Andrew at XAI or Amy at XAI, and it will just have conversations to figure out people's availability while you just kind of remove yourself from that conversation. That's a simple example. At IBM Insight a few weeks back, there's a great hotel app. Once you check into the hotel, instead of having to talk to somebody at the counter, for example, it was at Las Vegas, what show should I go watch? What's available? And the system will just respond back to you in intelligent fashion, but in text. You never have to download an app. You never have to learn any new system. It's just corresponding to you in the channel that you're used to, and you're able to transact and get everything that you need that you would otherwise have to do with a person.
I think that points out a really interesting trend, which is these experiences are delivered by systems, your word, and everybody's word, right? For the cloud data coming together, and what's so important about that is those are engines, right, that we're building in the cloud. We're programming those engines with rules and with the understanding of if this and this and this, then that. And so that means that our process of design is moving away from designing an experience at a moment in time and thinking about, okay, this is what I'm going to see, or this is what's going to come in, and therefore what's going to go out. But instead, I'm having to create these much more complex sets of interactions that are done by an intelligent engine that's programmed using those kinds of rules. It's a very different kind of design skill that needs to evolve in order to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, those text message, SMS-based applications are amazing, and they're so lightweight and so useful to just have, a number that you can send a message to and just immediately get the answer back without needing to open up yet another app on your phone.
So we only have about 5 minutes left. Let's take a couple questions from you guys. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
So you talked about systems for UX. So you were discussing the problems that lie within apps. Can you hear me out there?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I'll repeat the question. Just shout it out.
Okay. I was wondering if you ever see a mobile web acting more efficiently than an actual app could act.
He was wondering if you've ever seen a mobile website acting more efficiently than an app.
Or do you see that happening in the future for more businesses and brands?
Or do we see that happening in the future?
I think that's absolutely possible. There's, again, we're talking very much in the abstract, but it's often much quicker for me to open up mobile Safari on my iPhone to search for the piece of information I want on the web than to go digging through an app. There are many people who specialize in web performance and mobile performance in particular. The web can be performance optimized extremely well, and it's very open and can help you reach the widest possible audience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a well-designed responsive web application, if the styling is done correctly so that the style sheet's not too big and you can really get that page very quickly, can help you do a single interaction probably more effectively than that can. You know, with the example I gave earlier of giving a rating on Netflix movie, perfect use case.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Samsung, for example, has started to move away from Android OS to their own proprietary called Tizen OS that they're working with Intel on. And it's really fundamentally HTML5 and CSS. And what they're doing is they're using that language, which is essentially the web, to communicate between different profiles. And when they say profiles, they're talking about refrigerators and coffee makers and thermostats and cars and so forth. But it's that glue that's essentially communicating, detecting, and classifying, and then being able to send messages to the gateway to the cloud.
So we had a question up front too. Yes. Go ahead.
One of the frustrations also that I find is just the management of your identity, sort of the personalization aspect of all of this. How do you see that affecting UX? I mean, you talk about systems.
He was saying one thing that is really frustrating is the personalization.
Well, the part of like your online identity.
Your
You have so
own
many
online
different-
identity
You
and
have so many different apps and uses of your own personal information.
so you've
How
got so
does
many
that
different
get-
apps and the uses of your own
How does that get
personal
worked?
information. How do we handle that?
That totally sucks. I mean, I think there are solutions that are beginning to emerge, and you know, cloud identity management providers. I'm not the guy who, when I was at Forrester, covered that technology, so the only ones I know are the ones I've used, like Okta. Now, Okta is not really focused on a consumer use case. You could easily imagine a similar cloud-based approach, providing sort of one mechanism for you to manage the things about yourself that you want to be available across many different environments, and then using that as the source of identity for that personal data.
I think it very much depends on what your priority is. If your priority is, you know, efficiency and, you know, this lack of segmentation, then a manager would be the solution for that. I sort of like it. My own concerns about internet privacy. I think there's a book recently that makes the argument that you can't really keep your data out of the cloud, that your best strategy is obfuscation, to seed the cloud with fake data about yourself. So in that case, yeah, I can, you know, start opening new profiles that engage in different behavior that isn't really my own behavior. And without having a centralized identity management system, I can better obfuscate.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important to stay away from using something like Facebook as the tool for that, because when you sign in with Facebook or any other of the similar capabilities that are provided out there, you're really agreeing to sharing more information about your usage across those different domains than you probably want.
Just real quick, is I know there's some research happening at Stanford University. You know, one of the professors that I spoke with, who's really trying to work on this notion of data ownership. Who owns it? So right now, it's the Google, it's the Microsoft, it's the Dropbox that own your identity. But how do we start to bring that back? And I think one of the ways we're looking at it is home, particularly smart homes, and we're starting to see more of the storage capabilities, not just in the cloud, but being able to actually isolate it someplace where it's with you or near you. And then you give permission in terms of what gets delivered to what services, and it disappears. Moreover, this notion of data vault is really important. So I collaborated with Forrester on this privacy report that has to do with the notion that third-party data aggregators and services need to really provide a visibility into the granularity around preferences. So right now it's not mandatory, but from a best practice, if you're an app developer or even a website, you need to be able to allow for users to be able to look into what you're capturing and how you're using it, and allow for people to be able to manage those granularity. Again, it's not an all in or all out, but it's really being able to manage those fine-tuned grains. And lastly, privacy by design. Very important, and this is something I cover in Information Week and other publications, is you have to design the user experience privacy in mind first. It's a really well-known international framework that you can start to look at and adopt. It's already out there, we just need to start to use it.
Well, thank you so much for participating in the panel. Thanks everybody for coming. We'll be up here for a few minutes.